Today, social media is an intrinsic part of our daily lives. Facebook, WhatsApp, and Twitter have become an integral part of our world, and we as the youth have a great responsibility to positively leverage the power of social media to mobilize social change. Social media is also a large part of the narrative setting for politics and elections and the outreach efforts of political parties. It is therefore imperative in today's age to have a discussion on the role of social media in politics. Who better to discuss social media than Ms. Divya Spandana? Divya Spandana joined the Indian National Congress in 2012 as a member of its youth wing. In 2013, she won a by-election to become a member of parliament for the Mandya constituency in Karnataka, and currently she is the head of Congress's digital media team. She has been credited by media outlets for having radically transformed the political party's image on social media. To moderate this session, we have Mr. DNV Kumaraguru, Director of Marketing Communications and External Relations at ISB. I request both of our guests today to join us on stage, please. Over to you. Yes.
Yeah. Okay, great. Morning, everyone. After that first very interesting session on reservations, and especially after listening from a women member of parliament, talking very candidly about how it is difficult for her to change things, even though she happens to be the chief minister's daughter, because on issues like women reservations and so on, it's a whole bunch of things that sort of are in place, which either, as she said, mandated by law, or a very, very strong women-led sort of leadership that may probably change things. We come to another very interesting session. I say interesting because I think this morning our speaker here, Ms. Divya Spandana, sort of tweeted saying she's going to be at ISB, and sort of Twitter went on fire, as is the case. I don't know how you manage all these sort of waves of fire that you keep creating. Great. So that's exactly why we have you here. So a quick show of hands. How many of you are on Twitter? Okay. How many of you have tweeted anything about public affairs, policy, politics in the past 1 week? That's fairly active, at least politically active in terms of views. Great. So that's
I have a question.
Please.
If I may. How many of you are following the Indian National Congress on Twitter? Hey, I'm very happy. For all of those who did not raise your hand, please follow the INC. You don't have to engage with us if you don't want to engage, but it's very important because we're going in for elections, and I think it's imperative that you know what we're going to be doing for you, and of course we're going to be hearing from you what students want from whichever party gets elected. So I think you must follow our handles so you get more information. Thank you.
Great. So the sales pitch has already been done. Yeah. So I just, maybe in the interest of things, because one of the things that Divya Spandana has been sort of famous for is to take the battle to the forefront and not sort of playing defense. How many of you follow Narendra Modi on Twitter?
Not necessarily, that they follow him, but they follow him on Twitter. So it's okay.
Which is the same point you just made about just follow Congress. So I have the fortune of sharing stage presence with someone like Divya for the next 30-40 minutes. There's only two things that can come out of it, notwithstanding what we get in the room here. One is I will become famous on Twitter, or I'll become infamous on Twitter, right? But on a more serious note, and I do want to start off on that, because today's topic is, this dialogue is about social media and freedom of expression. So I'm going to start my first question, and here's the format for the benefit of audience. For the next 15-20 minutes, we will have a couple of questions. I have a couple of questions to ask of her, and then we'll throw it open to the audience. So keep the questions ready, and sort of we will get to you very quickly. What to you is freedom of expression? That's an important point that we are discussing also in the context of social media and our ability to sort of, I see something, I don't care who you are, I just want to tell you what it is, and I just sort of quickly tweet or post. What is freedom of expression?
I think, to me, freedom of expression is very important. We're in a democratic country, and it's everybody's right to be able to speak their mind, to give their opinion. I think the only thing that we need to keep in mind is, how we communicate with the other person. I think what I'm trying to emphasize here is on kindness. I think when we communicate with people, I think the important thing is to be kind. When you articulate something, when you're talking to somebody, you can criticize them, it's absolutely fine, but the wordings, the messaging is very important. As long as that's in place, I think freedom of expression should be okay.
So I ask this also because the Constitution guarantees freedom of expression, but it's not absolute. There are some conditions that sort of get imposed by the Constitution, and the courts interpret it. And you raised an important point about kindness. But you said, so long as you're kind, it's okay for you to sort of say what you feel. In the American system, a lot of us are here, especially we're in a state which has the largest number of sort of visa applicants to the US. You can say pretty much anything about President Trump. Nobody's going to say anything to you, right? Yeah. But in India, I don't think we are in that stage.
No, I have two sedition cases, yeah.
You've been sort of on the receiving end of, several such things. So, should India be, I hate to say this, but should India be like the US on that? Or is it fine for us to be like this and sort of face these sort of, repercussions that come? Your comment about Sardar Patel's statue and Prime Minister Modi, but and things like that.
It's not about the statue, though.
On that occasion, him looking at the statue. Yeah.
I didn't think it was him. But anyway, I definitely do think that India, I don't mean ape America, sure, but then I think that India is the largest democracy in the world, and therefore I think that we should give everybody their right to be able to speak their mind. Yeah, for sure.
Okay. So in terms of the Congress party revival on Twitter, revival on ground is probably going to be seen in the next 2-3 months, and people here are going to judge and sort of cast their votes. You have been credited with having sort of, got the Congress party's Twitter and that of the Congress president. How did you manage to do that? What were some of your thoughts, and does the party like it as well? I mean, the sort of old timers in the party?
Well, lots of questions there. I think it wasn't just me, it was the team who sort of backed me, and Hasiba is here, she's our national convener. When I first joined, I remember, and when the announcement was made, a lot of people from the other parties, they were like, oh, she's a woman, what would she know about social media? How can she handle tech? How would she even understand it? And stuff like that. Oh, she's an actress, I mean, supposedly we're supposed to be dumb and we don't know anything else. So those sort of comments I had. And when I went to the office, I remember the first day, I saw just 2 women there. And that's one of the big changes that I made, which is to bring in more women into the team, because I think, when you get a man's perspective and you don't get a woman's perspective, then there's an imbalance, and it's skewed towards one perspective. So I got in more women because the BJP has lots of men in their social media, and they were always trolling us. So I thought if we had more women, we'd sort of counter, but not exactly hit below the belt, and because they were giving us like rape threats, death threats, and not sparing anybody's kids or parents and things like that. So I think that having women in the team made a big difference. One of the complaints that we had received, I think, post-2014 elections was that Congress never communicated with us. Because we didn't really use social media to communicate with all the young people, and everybody had taken to social media. It was a great platform for us to engage with them, but unfortunately we did not communicate with them. And I think communication is extremely important. Whether the person agrees with you or not is secondary, but you need to be able to communicate, especially as a political party, because you are the voice of the people, right? So you hear from them, and then you sort of raise it in parliament and you take up issues for them. So I think on that front, we're sort of making, I think we've come a long way. I don't think that my agenda was never to sort of control the narrative online, because then we become like the BJP, and social media cannot be about one narrative alone. There should be diverse voices, there should be different narratives, and it's for the person who's using social media, for them to sort of make up their mind which one they align with. So I think in that sense, right now, I think you see a little bit of a regional parties are also taking up to social media. So you hear a lot of voices, and I think that's very, very healthy for a democracy.
How does your social media war room look like? Just give us a sense. I mean, number of people, what do you guys do? What are your plans, big plans for 2019 general elections, 6-8 weeks away from now?
Well, the office is always buzzing with a lot of activity, so there's always something or the other going on. We're always following the news. There's a lot of ideating happening. There's a lot of research. Sometimes they come out with something, then we have to counter. It's mostly fake news, so they're pretty much keeping us on our feet all the time, because they don't care about the facts. So we're like constantly having to counter them. So in that sense, it's a lot of work. And of course, since the elections are coming up, so we're kind of busy with having consultations with people across India from different sections of society, hearing from them what they want from us, and then kind of putting this thing together. And I think messaging is so important, right? For example, I don't know how many of you actually get down to reading manifestos of political parties. How many of you read? Okay, that's great in ISB, but most people don't really read manifestos because it's very exhaustive, and the way it's put, it's like reading. I'm sure all of you guys like reading very heavy books, but the normal public, they don't.
No, so it's about this audience is actually predominantly from outside of ISB as well. So I just want to let you know as well.
Okay.
So it's a very well-educated, sort of engaged audience.
Okay, great, I'm sure. So it's about putting these things very in a compact manner and targeting people who, I'm just saying, for example, like students would be really interested in knowing what they can expect, right? Sure. What's in it for them. I'm not sure if they're really interested in knowing what exactly we're doing for farmers or for MSMEs, I'm not sure. So it's about targeted messaging and about, giving people what they want to hear, what's more interesting to them. Yeah.
Okay. I have a question which is more about sort of how ready is the Indian audience or electorate for social media? And I ask this because I'm just trying to contrast two incidents and sort of our response. When I say our response, all of us as Indians, to some of these things. So there was this attack on the sort of, the French newspaper, Charlie Hebdo, in Jan 2015. So this huge trend started online called Je suis Charlie, right? Some of you may have changed your display pictures, some of you may have tweeted with that hashtag. A lot of such things happened back then. We had the Pulwama thing a few days ago, of course, but now you see the Pulwama thing is mostly about Twitter, sort of everybody want to sort of this thing. There's no, I get a sense that people are not really engaged in that sense on some of these real issues via social media. Someone who's leading the Congress party's social media strategy, how do you sort of respond to something like this? You saw a large response for Je suis Charlie, but not as much for Pulwama online. I'm only referring to online, not in real this thing.
I don't know, I would tend to disagree with you here. I
Sure.
do think that online in the last couple of days, that's all that's been on our timelines, and that's all the conversation has been about, that, why Pulwama happened, because demonetization was supposed to, have, stopped terrorism, but that did not happen. And also the fact that, there could have been so many reasons we could have avoided it, but how did that happen? And they had intelligence report before, but they did not act on it. So a couple of questions that we were asking, and I think the conversation was about it, and I felt the anger online was quite palpable, that despite having all this information, you all didn't do anything about it. And so I disagree that that there wasn't much conversation about Pulwama. Of course, I don't think the Prime Minister really cared, but apart from that, I think the general public who were online, it was quite palpable.
Okay, let's take the anger that you're talking about online, and how do you, as a party, translate that into votes in your favor? I mean, how does this strategizing happen in the Congress party?
I don't...
You know, is that of interest to people here to understand? You get a lot of online feedback, and you're saying there's this huge sort of uproar, possibly against BJP.
No.
How do you translate that?
No. I don't think on this particular incident there was any sort of, trying to garner votes at all. These were very legit questions that we were asking. And in fact, our party leader, Congress President Rahul Gandhi, I remember when we had the press conference, we said that we support the government and, we'll go with whatever they decide. And so there was no politicization of sorts in this particular incident. But then it was imperative for us as the opposition to raise these questions, because this is what people were asking online, and this is what the media was also writing about. So it was important for us to raise these questions. I don't think we raised them to, channel any anger towards the BJP or the, the Prime Minister, or to garner votes. I mean, at the end of the day, it's for people to decide. But I don't think we strategized in any way to sort of do anything of that sort.
Okay, so you're saying you're not politicizing this issue, but if you were to just use that as a different one, maybe I picked a wrong example, but on another issue where it's not about martyrs, it's not about some of these sensitive things, but there's generally a true public anger against a particular decision of the government. My question is, how do you translate that into actual action on the ground through your cadres? How does the social media impact sort of policy making or decision making in the party, like the Congress party, for instance?
So let's take the corruption in Rafale, or let's take demonetization, or GST, the way it was implemented. Or the farmers, right? I mean, who came and threw their produce on the roads because they were not getting their minimum support price. All these things, why we take it, because large number of people are online and they use different platforms, whether it's Facebook, Instagram, WhatsApp, or Twitter. So we try and reach out to as many people as possible through these platforms. But I think it's also important to carry the message offline, like you said. So we're all sort of in sync with one another in terms of our communication and messaging. And whether it's the frontals, NSUI, Youth Congress, Mahila Congress, and the Seva Dal, for example. So all of us sort of are in sync with what the communication should be, and we take it to everybody offline as well, for those who do not use social media. So we carry the message. Because we're not dependent on the media, the mainstream media, because they're not exactly on our side. So then that's a bit of a challenge. So we use social media. Sorry?
No, I was just saying there are a few from the media here who I'm sure would like to sort of ask questions.
Probably. Yes, free to.
Yeah. So that's an important point. How do you change that? I mean, when you're saying that mainstream media is not on your side, so that's almost like you're saying that they're supporting the Prime Minister, but is that issue-based, or the ruling party, is that issue-based support, or you're just saying that there's just a very biased favor sort of towards BJP?
I think they're under immense pressure, right? Because I don't think they have the editorial freedom today to write what they want. I do think that most of the time, we've seen many editors being sacked, many journalists being sacked, journalists being killed, for having had a different opinion. I don't think today, I think freedom of expression is, of course, being suppressed, especially that of the media. Also because, see, I feel like the media revenue comes from, government advertisements and, brand advertising and things like that. So when they pull out, then you're under pressure. So, you can't write what you want to write at the end of the day. For example, when Judge Loya was killed, we had a press conference. Nobody carried it. We were the only ones who carried it on our social media platforms. And when Rafale, right, we've been talking about it since 2017, 2018 throughout, and it's only now that it's sort of, the media has started to question. So I would say in that, even for demonetization, right, nobody really questioned it in the beginning, right? It was the opposition parties that came together and questioned it. But it was only after people started realizing that 99% of the money actually came back. And, there was, of course, there's still cash lying around, terrorism hasn't been stopped, black money hasn't come back. That's when people started realizing that, hey, the media did not really educate us. It's not the media that was before. Today it's all about sources, tell us, nobody really cares to, do research, do long stories and find out what the truth is. Because they're in a hurry to sort of, plug in their story, and there's TRP, there's competition, and what is your headline? Various things that come into play here. So when the government is in power, they usually tend to sort of like, control the media, and of course the courts and,
Any government or just the current government?
With the Congress, though, we did not do that. With the Congress, we did not. I mean, you heard about 2G, and of course, they found that there was no scam. But they had the freedom to say what they wanted. I mean, Nehru allowed people to do caricatures of him, and, Indira Gandhi too. So, I mean, we've allowed that. I mean, we've allowed all of you to call our leaders names and all sorts of things, and he's acknowledged it himself in Parliament. So, we've never sort of curbed freedom. In fact, I think Sacred Games had something about Rajiv Gandhi. And Mr. Gandhi said that, freedom of expression must be, allowed, and you're free to say what you want, but that doesn't change, my opinion of my father. So, I mean, for everybody who gave that applause, you're free to, but this is the truth.
Okay. I want to sort of touch upon a topic that I read in the India Today magazine just this last week, and the cover story was that the women voters in India this election will actually make or break parties. And one interesting sort of data point from there is that in the last general elections, 2014, the percentage of men who voted from the eligible ones was 67%, and for women it was 65%. So this is the narrowest sort of gap, so to speak. And this elections may be a convergence or maybe more women. One of the other, that's one data point for you. The other one is that women-led parties have actually appealed better to women voters. Is there a reason why Priyanka Gandhi made this entry? Are you recognizing this shift in how women voters are largely influencing, and is there some deep thinking, or is it just about I'm ready to get into politics and then sort of you get elevated to the very top position?
I think she's always been working in the background, and I think the party wanted her, and it was her choice at the end of the day. Nobody's imposed upon or anything like that, so it's her choice. But I think it's a great thing that women are actually leading this, and they're coming out in large numbers and voting, because I always think that a woman, I'm sorry, I don't want to say this, but I always think that a woman can definitely, do a better job than a man.
We all agree.
No offense, but yeah. There's a saying, right? You educate a woman and then you, sorry? No, you educate a woman and then, sorry? Yeah, exactly, so yeah.
No, I think
something more about a nation. She takes anyway. Never mind.
Yeah, that must have been said when Indira Gandhi was the prime minister. No, about the nation.
It was not said. I read it somewhere, but anyway.
No, I agree. I think there's different versions of it, all very valid, which is
yeah.
sort of, that women are very important.
But the important thing is a woman.
Yeah. No. I think that at least here I think that nobody has any disagreement or.
You educate a woman, you educate a nation. That's what it is.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, we'll take one more question and then sort of, start with the audience. Are we ready for the audience thing? Are you going to do it via app or is it open? Okay, great. So the question is more for you. I mean, I come from the same state as Ms. Divya Spandana, and you've had a very interesting sort of career as an actress, as a parliamentarian, and now as the head of the sort of social media for the oldest party in the country. 2019, are you going to be in the electoral fair, or are you just going to be a political strategist? Sorry, I shouldn't say just a political strategist. It's a very important role. Are you going to be a political strategist?
A lot of things.
What's in it for you? What's your next?
I'm really taking every day as it comes, and I'm, anytime the party needs me, I'm there for them. But if you ask me personally, I don't have electoral politics on my mind.
But did you enjoy the 1 year or year plus whatever that you were as a member of parliament?
Yeah, personally for me, it was a time that I really found myself, because I had lost my father the day I filed for nomination, and 10 days later I was in parliament, and I came towards the fag end of the 15th Lok Sabha. So it was very overwhelming. It was very insightful, and it gave me a glimpse into how we function. And it was a great learning experience for me, and I loved it because I was the youngest and everybody doted on me, so I had a really good stint. I've so far really enjoyed the political career that I've had so far. Very enriching, I must say. Yeah, very different from the when I was an actress, the life that I saw, to then being a parliamentarian, going to rural India. I mean, it really is very insightful. We get really cut away and disconnected from real India, when we're so living comfortable lives, but then it is something else. And I think all of you must, at some point, really try and get into politics, because it's a different experience altogether. And life is all about experiences. So
how hard or easy is it? I mean, if there are people here, I'm sure that many of them are saying, I want to be like you, or I want to be like any of the speakers who are sitting on stage today. How hard is it or difficult is it? Do you have to?
I won't say it's easy, because as long as the voter takes money, it will always be very difficult for someone really genuine who's working at the grassroots level to get elected. So it's about that change has to happen. I wouldn't say it's easy, but I think it's not the impossible either. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great. We'll now throw it open to the audience sort of rounds, and we'll sort of
be nice.
Thank you, ma'am and sir, for that discussion. Can we have a round of applause before we move on to the questions, please?
Thank you.
So we've collected the questions through our app. We've received a large number of questions, and therefore, due to the paucity of time, we will not be able to entertain questions directly. Instead, I'll be reading out the questions and mentioning who those questions are from.
So are you all here?
Yeah, it's all through an app. So it's not like somebody wrote it somewhere. So it's all.
So the first question is from Mrs. Saka Surya, who says that in light of recent disruptive activities happening through a trigger on social media, the government has come up with a surveillance policy. Now, you've mentioned a lot of instances where the BJP has been violating freedom of speech and expression, but it was the Congress which brought the IT 66 Act, and more than one party, do you think it's the government in control which wishes to monitor speech? Secondly, what institutional changes would you suggest to avoid a similar situation if the UPA returns to power?
What similar situation?
In terms of surveillance, in terms of the government controlling speech on social media?
Well, controlling speech, I think the responsibility, the onus should be on the individual, because I'm against any kind of regulation of sort, right? Because at any given time, it can be misused by any government in future. So I'm against any sort of banning or regulation of that sort. Surveillance is important in some sense. I don't mean like our personal messaging and phones and emails, but I feel like because it's such a volatile neighborhood that we have, so I think surveillance to a certain extent is I mean, we'd be foolish if we didn't do it. But I don't think we don't have a privacy law yet. So I think if we do get elected to power, I think that we must, bring together policymakers and lawyers who put together a good privacy law for India. I think that should kind of like, make all of this, We don't have a privacy law. Yes, but then we don't have a privacy law.
We'll take the questions and then go one by one. Can we go next?
Yeah. So the next question is that Ms. Manika Gandhi had recently requested to tag her online in case anyone gets trolled on social media. The traffic and state police social media handles have also been very responsive in case of online trolling. Firstly, what do you think about online trolling and how do you deal with cyberbullying? And secondly, what do you think needs to be done to monitor public speeches or posts by students in an offline environment as well?
Two questions there, no?
Yes.
Okay. I think online trolling, see, as long as you're criticizing someone or you disagree with someone and you're making a point, it's fine. I don't think that hitting below the belt, calling someone names, or giving them threats of any kind is okay. I'm not okay with that. As for me, I've customized my settings so I don't really read my notifications, so I can get through the day without all the negativity. But I know friends who've had threats given to them and their children, and they've tried to file cases, but it's not really been very helpful, only because, like I said, the laws are very flimsy at the moment. It needs a little more fine-tuning of sorts. A little more study has to be done. I think countries like New Zealand and if I'm not mistaken, Scotland, they all have anti-trolling policies. So I think we can take a look at that and see if we can sort of, put that in place over here. The students, offline. I think you should be allowed to say what you want, no? Like, are you allowed to question your teachers? No, why? You should be allowed to question your teachers. And the other thing I have a problem with, I think that everything is so bookish in the education system, at least, the school that I went to. You have to give like specific answers and only then it's okay. Like even if you miss a word here or there, it's like wrong. But I have a different perspective, I have a different take, and the answer could be right. It's about allowing the person to think differently, because I think it is important to get the other person's perspective and at least look into it, because you could find answers there. Does he allow you to ask him questions?
I don't teach anyone, so the guy who teaches is sitting here.
Oh, great.
Are there ISB students here?
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
The hooting said it.
And they have his permission to say so.
So that's great, right? That's very healthy, because I think the more people communicate, the more you engage in dialogue, so much more we learn. So I think that's great. That's very healthy. Yeah.
Also offline. So I spent a lot of time with my students offline, in their rooms, in the quads. So.
Yeah.
You don't really intrude into their privacy, but then you just kind of like spend time.
Okay, I think we've run out of time for questions. Thank you, ma'am and sir, once again. And I request Vipin to present a token of our gratitude to Divya ma'am and Mr. Kumar Guru.
Can I just say one word? There was, the students have been working real hard to get this conclave going. At one point of time, we had more BJP leaders confirming and practically none from the Congress. And I do want to thank Ms. Divya Spandana for sort of coming here. For a variety of reasons. It's not because they didn't want to come here, just calendars, dates, this thing. We also have another MP from Congress later. But the only point is, why is it important? Is because when the first poster was put out, and this is about social media and freedom of expression, right? The first poster was put out by the students. People said, oh, this is ISB, sort of ISB is going right-wing, ISB is not inclusive, etc., etc. And then there was a poster put out 5 days ago of Divya Spandana joining us, said, oh, ISB has lost its eminence, it's not, you're inviting Divya Spandana. I think both are wrong, right? And the point I made earlier, at least my limited this thing, is that social media gives us the freedom to just say what we want to say without even thinking of the consequence. I think it's not good for us to do that. There are reasons why something is happening. If you don't know it fully, should we say that? Freedom of expression is important, and it's, in my view, should be absolute to a very, very large extent. But to make these things, it's not easy. And there are a lot of people who are working hard, sort of in front, behind. So therefore, on that note again, thank you very much for taking time out to come down here.
Can I give him the real reason why I came here though? Despite the fact that I had a really bad throat yesterday, I've had many friends who've passed out of ISB, and they're all great, great people, lovely friends that I have. And at one point of time, I wanted to come here.
You can still do
and
that.
I'm here. So I'm very happy.
No, you can still come in as a student. So we'll have a tough interview though. That's
sure. No, that's okay. This has been quite tough, by the way.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
So the next session will be with Mr. Ram Madhav. There won't be a break right now. Please be seated. He'll be arriving within the next minute or two.